I'm proud of you. Though if you make him a villain, I wouldn't be mad. Thank you to our $5 patrons, Redwolf4765, Midnight Gemlord, and Sean. Thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays and Redwolf4765. And a very big thank you to our $25 patron, Alex Ice Rose. Now, we're having this breakdown, such discussion on what's next on the docket for Jade of the secondary group of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse. Please remember to leave your own listen what could happen with Jade from now on in the comments section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also hit that little notification so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also I do a Patreon below, each one as one, get them $1 a month, line news videos, early content, and more. If you now become a Maryland channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now let's hop into the discussion. What's up guys, I'll Pencil here, and you may be wondering, hey Pencil Man, what do you mean what's next for Jade? The only thing that's next for him is a funeral. And like, to be fair, you do have a point. And to be fair, Nakaba has deliberately gone out of his way to explain to us verbatim, through the magical infinite powers of Percy's mystical, wonderful, crazy hope magic, that Jade is gone. Like, his body's there, but his mind, his soul, the thing that lets him breathe and eat and drink and be, is all gone. That man is totally, absolutely, and indubitably dead. And you got a point. Maybe I shouldn't expect anything. Maybe, you know, like, people just die when they are killed. Maybe this is just it. Like, that Jade's done. But, as I've been constantly mentioning around the idea of Jade and his death, in Seven Deadly Sins, death is not the final frontier. We know this quite literally for a fact. There are multiple other frontiers you can go to after death. So let's talk about some of the ways that Nakaba could continue to use Jade's character. And I specifically mean Jade's character. Obviously, this is going to have ramifications on the characters who are still living, but ramifications of them aren't necessarily being useful for Jade's character. Like, I wouldn't say all the flashbacks and discussion we get about Varghese adds to Varghese's character. Because Varghese is dead. Like, legitimately, he's gone too. So any retrospective analysis by characters would just be that. Retrospective analysis. Jade himself as a character being further developed, being further explained, being further utilized. All of that is what we shall be discussing today. And let's go with, in my opinion, the least favorable, least likely, and I'd say like least enjoyable route. Jade comes back and is a protagonist. Like, he just is a protagonist. Hypothetically, how he could come back is just completely unknown. Like, well, not completely unknown. He could be revived. He could be revived by Big Papa Art. Because we know Art literally can just make people. He could just do it. And considering Jade's body is deliberately described as perfectly intact, they did heal him completely. And we know that Arthur definitely has the ability to interact with the afterlives, whether it be his direct connection to make weapons or magical tools that connect straight to purgatory, or him just using the knowledge of the world structure, literally just showing up in the capital of the dead, considering we know he has connections to the afterlife, and thusly, like the original series Sins, he could easily just go there and snatch up a soul and leave. We know it's not hard for even just your average demon to interact with souls within Seven Deadly Sins, so it wouldn't be entirely impossible for the literal creator of the verse to interact with souls in Seven Deadly Sins. So with that being the case, there is definitely a way for Jade to come back, but I do believe the protagonist route is 1, the least likely, 2, the most boring, and 3, just both. Like, legitimately, it's just not fun. And let's talk about the least likely thing. Why do I think it's unlikely that Jade would be brought back as a protagonist? Because, like, we slayed him as a protagonist, and one of the biggest issues we have right now, even with the Four Knights cast that's left over, is that there's a lot of redundancy. Like, we have 2 healers within the Four Knights group itself. We have multiple people who can do what Jade does within the Four Knights group itself, even better than he can do. Whether it be Percy using his magic, Tristan using his magic, Lance can transform and utilize better variations of what Jade could do, if not transform into Jade and utilize his basic magic, if we believe it goes that far. And Gawain likely has spells that can do the same thing of extracting vision or creating light. Legitimately, all the Four Knights just neg Jade entirely, so bringing him back for a battlefront brings nothing. Like, it brings absolutely nothing to the narrative. He didn't necessarily serve a purpose in the narrative when he was alive, so him coming back as a protagonist to the Allies on a battlefront wouldn't do much. For the character front, I still don't think there's actually much you can really do with him at this point. And this is after Nakaba proving that he can develop a character when he feels like developing a character. Jade went from a legitimate nothing character to legitimately one of my favorites in a matter of like 10 chapters. Probably less. Like, even less actual screen time within those chapters. Like, bro had a massive glow up character-wise. But once again, what does he necessarily bring dynamic-wise to the table that you just can't get anywhere else? He's a cool kid that interacts with all the other cool kids. I got nothing. I don't think there's anything interesting tied into his backstory. There's nothing fancy about that. He just seems to be a dude from Dude Land. I don't think there's anything interesting he could do that, once again, couldn't just be done by other characters. Introspection on Light and Darkness can be entirely backed by Tristan. I don't think anyone would care otherwise. Any sort of conversation or discussion around love and what that could mean can be done by numerous other characters, whether it be Lancelot with his own twisted love story, Percival and Anne, and or Isolde and Tristan, something that's already sort of just being set up to be endgame at this point. And heck, even Gawain is undeniably thirsty, so it won't be love, but we can definitely get some L discussions up in here, if you know what I'm talking about. So, like, legitimately, he brings nothing to the table on that front. So, if you don't bring anything character-wise, which is one half of the narrative, and you don't bring anything combat-wise, which is the other half of the narrative, and you don't even bring anything like mystery or backstory or history-wise, like, I got nothing. Like, what do you bring to the table at all in terms of a character? Nothing. And that's presumably why, if I do believe that Nakaba is just loading and firing off on characters, that's why I believe Jade went first. Nakaba just didn't build him with anything of major interest. Think about it. Every other character either has, I'm one of the main characters, one of the titular characters for interest, or they have some tie to the past, or they have mystery in them, which could be expanded on later. All the four knights are the four knights. The series is named for them. Yeah, they're all going to be important one way or another. Not talking about any of their specifics, and they all have their own individual specifics that can make up their own video on why they are not going anytime soon. Then you have the love interest in Isolde and Anne, and I'm sorry, as shocking and subversive that Nakaba can occasionally be, he ain't that shocking, and he's not that subversive, so there's no way they're being executed anytime soon, even if they didn't have mystery. And to be fair, we don't know much about Isolde's past. I do think it is just pretty generic. I don't think there's anything fancy behind that. But Anne's whole past is just a fat old mystery. Like, what's up with her mom? What happened with that? What are her ties to Camelot? Top that off with the fact that she has this weird magic stuff that we're cooking as of very recent, and yeah, she's gonna do just fine on the longevity front. I can see Isolde going before I see her going. But the two love interests I also think are safe in the bag. Donny and Chion have direct ties to previous characters who at least had some importance. Gilthunder and Hauser were two relatively important characters who are still loved by the fan base to this day, even if they haven't necessarily been relevant in Gilthunder's case since season 1, and in Hauser's case since early Four Knights. Still, people love these characters, and any of their direct descendants, in the direct offspring case in terms of Chion, and in the nephew case in terms of Donny, highly unlikely that they're going to go anywhere. And once again, Donny's whole past is a mystery that I feel like kind of has to be explored, but at the same time doesn't have to be. So there is a little bit of mystery on his front too. And then finally you have the mystery man's nasiens, whose whole character can either A, just be put to bed perfectly, because like, oh, well, we don't need any of that mystery solved, he's just an orphan for orphan's sake, or B, the reason Nakaba didn't tell us who his parents are and went out of our way, or went out of his way to inform us that, hey, you know, this is a pretty mysterious case here. He just showed up on the doorstep of Ordo one day. A baby with this extremely broken magical ability to consume, negate, and recreate poisons and even other magics. That's crazy. Like, legitimately, Nasiens has more in the bag cooking on his own, and his magic is also just way more useful, and is one of the few that technically can get overridden, but due to the lack of ability for Tristan to heal poisons, and Percy's like unknown ability to heal poison, I don't think he can though, because like Elgin's stuff worked on him and that was just poison. So like, arguably, our two main healers can heal poisons, and Nasiens is there. He brought something to the table, both on the ability front, in the combat front, and in the character front. All of these characters have something they can cook with. All of these characters have something that they can actually contribute to the narrative, whether it's a good thing they're contributing or not. I'll talk about that separately. Jade, he comes back as a protagonist, he brings none of that. Like, legitimately nothing to the table. Like, bro is bringing himself to the table, expecting to be fed. And I just don't see that happening. It's just too little, too late. I don't think Nakaba's going to add anything retroactively to the character post-revival that warrants their revival specifically as a protagonist. I don't think you get much anywhere from any angle. I think he literally works better in death in that sense, because we can have more to do with him there than we could if he was around. He would kind of just take up space. And the common consensus around the community is that, heck, we want more side characters to go even faster because we want more and more and more of the Four Knights. And while I can definitely understand that, I'm kind of a side character guy myself, so I kind of want him to stick around for a little bit, though I smell some of them are definitely on the chopping block. But speaking on the chopping block, let's talk about the other hypothetical revival. The context I've been talking Jade within is purely under a protagonistic front. But what if he were to come back as an antagonist? Does he add anything to the narrative then? Yes, kind of. No, mostly. And let's talk about why. Specifically, it kind of is low-key being set up by Nakaba that Jade could be an antagonistic individual to specifically Tristan. We see at the end of chapter 100, as Kine is flashing back to a conversation that he and Jade had, that Jade actually despises Sir Tristan and everything he stands for, legitimately hates his guts, wishes that man was not alive because obviously he kind of got Jade's woman for him, and thusly it's not looking too hot for our boy Jade. And that's just a major thing that's set up there. Why even mention this? Why make Jade suddenly a hater unless, hypothetically, you were planning to bring him back as the ultimate hater? But the reason I say kinda is because if Jade is just brought back as he is now, he's... what's the word? 6 letters, rhymes with daughter. He's something a bit fodder. Like, legitimately, I would say, out of everyone, except for even, I don't know, with Anne with her magic ant, may just go crazy. But with that being the case, I just kind of don't see Jade being like a worthy antagonist if he's brought back as he was. Very specifically, I don't see him being anything useful in combat. And unfortunately, just due to how Fortnite is being paced right now, specifically on a power scaling front, to the point where commandment level isn't necessarily that impressive to most characters in the verse right now. You have Isolde out here chunking fused commandments, admittedly while mental amp, but still, that's a thing. Jade just doesn't have anything in his kit that's really doing something like that. He's just not doing that. And if he were to come back into the narrative specifically as an antagonist, who would he be antagonizing? Sylvain? The strongest character in the verse? I don't think so. Like, we literally get nothing out of bringing him back as he is now, specifically as an antagonist, if the characters take him seriously. Hypothetically, you could bring him back as an antagonist and have it be like the, oh no, I can't hurt my former friend, and now, since he's evil, there's just no way. No, Jade, don't do this. And then he like takes someone out, which would be hilarious. But not hilarious is the wrong word there. Not hilarious. It'd be horrifying. Wrong H word. But with that being the case, I do believe that him coming back as the same that he was before is a little bit unlikely. Hypothetically, him coming back as an antagonist, I'd be a bit more cool with that on a character front and a power front. But, well, no, not the power front. That's the issue. He comes back as he is, not the power front. However, what I will admit is that with Arthur, you know, being the chef that he is, he could cook in more ways than one. And this is where we get into the interesting part about Jade being revived, specifically as an antagonist. Because we get a couple things out of Jade being an antagonist that we wouldn't get otherwise if he was revived or if he were to stay gone. One, genuine character conflict. The whole idea of characters being more than powerful enough to one-shot their former friends, but, you know, not being able to do that is a little bit... Is cliche the word? Or at least I'd feel like it's not worth it at this point, specifically in a world like Seven-deadlysins, where we've seen things like that happen already in the cases of like King and Helbram. So I feel like Nakaba may not want to rehash that, and thusly would go in a slightly different route, where Jade is revived by Arthur purely out of spite. Purely out of spite. He has the body, he can go grab the soul and just shove it right back in, and put Jade under his control and have his friends suffer by forcing him to be taken out again by their own hands. And the thing is, he could just keep doing it. There's no reason why he couldn't. Just keep bringing back Jade. Throw him up against Tristan again and again and again, and have Tristan have to grow numb to the idea of slaying his own friend again and again and again and again. It's really, unfortunately, once again, due to the nature of Jade as a character, not necessarily being the most interesting. Not only would this capitalize the one interesting point of Jade and his hypothetical dynamic with Tristan as someone he does not like and someone he despises for something that Tristan cannot control, but also it gets to the idea of Arthur just really being just the worst dude. like the most terrible person on the planet, like really just a atrocious individual. I think it's worth it, notably because Arthur, despite having beef directly with pretty much every single one of our Four Knights at this point, with Percy having beef with him because of what happened to Varghese, with Tristan having beef with him because he's in hacking his kingdom, with, and obviously, slaying Jade, topped that off with Lancelot's beef with him because of Jericho, and Gawain's own beef with him because, trauma. With all that being the case, we could just make him worse. Like, legitimately, use Jade, once again, as a tool for other characters, specifically as a tool to make our main cast suffer, while at the same time making Arthur just look worse. And worse. And worse. And once again, with the whole setup of Tristan already not being a liked individual by Jade, you have motivation for Jade to go evil, especially if he's under the same kind of influence that Gawain and Melascula were, where his memories are tampered with. Arthur could literally break his mind to the point where he believes that the reason he died was because of Tristan and not his own self-sacrifice, and thusly he comes back as an antagonist that is honest about his feelings. He's not just going to hide it in a conversation with Chion that happened who knows when. No, he's going to say it directly to Tristan's face. He's going to blame him. He's going to pull all that darkness out, all that hatred, and there's where I think you can get an interesting character from the revival. Because here's the thing, I believe personally, if you are going to revive characters, you need to do something with them. Something of importance, whether it be to their character or other characters, outside of just scaling. Because admittedly, I'm something of a scalar man myself. I appreciate, yes, we have commandment scaling, hypothetically stronger than commandment scaling, through the resurrection of Gawain and Melascula. But I don't like it, because admittedly, bringing characters back just to slay them again is not my thing. Do something with their characters. And with that being the case, that's why I believe Gawain and Melascula kind of failed. And I don't want Jade to be brought back for the same metric of just, showing how juicy and jacked our characters are. But considering Jade is fodder anyway, and we know Nakaba, he's not necessarily the kind of guy that'll come in and be like, oh wow, I've revived this character, and now they're so specifically powerful that they're above commandment tier, so they're actually be a relevant threat. He's not the kind of guy to do that. If he were to bring Jade back as an antagonist, it would specifically be for the character stuff. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, Nakaba is at his best when he is writing characters. The man can cook, honestly, almost, like, I'd say one of the best in the league when it comes to him really sitting down and writing character conflicts and interpersonal conflicts between characters. Look at Mael and Gother. Look at the Seven Deadly Sins with any of their respective antagonists. Look at the Seven Deadly Sins amongst themselves. There's so much good character internal conflict there, and you can do that with Jade. You can bring him back just for that. And once again, just the haunting idea of Arthur essentially puppeteering around the corpse of the Tristan platoon's dead homie would be crazy for setting up why these people should hate this man even more. Admittedly, everyone already has a reason, at least out of the main group, and I don't think the external group is going to last so long, but imagine Isolde getting a personal, direct hatred for Arthur, not only for the fact that one of Arthur's own men slayed her friend, but now Arthur is puppeteering around the corpse of her friend. That would be legendary. It would be great. It would be juicy, especially since I'm under the assumption that she's not going to go. Chion can go. Isolde, though, I don't see Tristan getting a new love interest anytime soon, so I think that one's kind of just stuck in the mud. So we can do that. We can get good stuff on a character front out of him being an antagonist, and if we need to buff him up, because, you gotta kind of buff him up, at its core, no matter what Nakaba wants to tell you, Seven Deadly Sins is inherently a battle manga. We can buff him up a little bit with all the chaos juice that we need to actually have him be a relevant threat, and then bada bing, bada boom, you get the 2-for-1 combo. You bring him back, and he's not wasted by just sitting around being a useless protagonist. It's already redundant. You get to amp his magical abilities, which are already based in light and dark, which can make him a very interesting foe to Tristan on the antagonistic front as another being who would wield light and dark, and maybe lead to something like Tristan's evolution, where he merges the two to form a sort of chaotic Twilight, if you will. And on top of that, you get all the character ramifications that it would not only have on Jade and the rest of the group. If Jade came back and was admitting his true feelings and his general distaste with the quest itself and the impact that it had on him, his death, like all that would be great. And at the same time, you get all the wonderful backlash ramifications that it has for other characters, like Arthur in particular in this case. Notably, now that Merlin has sort of been set aside as a major antagonist, unfortunately our only long-lasting real antagonist of any sort of power is Arthur, so a lot of his men are going to have to do a lot of the speaking for him. Yes, we do have Ironside, yes, we do have Pelgard, but those characters seem unique in their own major ways. I feel like tying things directly back to Arthur in terms of magical abilities, manipulation, and suffering that he's putting our main cast through if we bring Jade back as an antagonist, specifically through Arthur's power, we can get a whole lot more of that. And considering the fact that the whole story is essentially going to be piece by piece by piece, Nakaba building up to the ideas that he's laid the groundwork for Arthur being a terrible individual and or Chaos being a terrible individual, if you don't believe Arthur's going to be the final antagonist, then we make it work to the point where we're just adding more and more fuel to the fire. You can't have enough of Arthur being a terrible human being, and bringing Jade back specifically to suit that end would be perfect in my opinion. But the question is, if this is so perfect, when would I want to bring him back? And I would say after they've hypothetically buried him, or given him like a warrior's funeral, or sent him back to Leonis. Like, give it time. Let us settle. Let us think, let us ruminate on the idea that the boy is gone, and then maybe around the early 200s, when everything seems to start stabilizing. Though, admittedly, I do think more characters are going to perish along the way. But after a while, bring him back once everyone has gotten stable and comfortable, and have it shake up the formula a bit. Have it mix and break the ankles of our entire cast, and now they have to deal with their friend turned antagonist. Then I think it would be some heat. Then I think bringing Jade back, his sacrifice and all that would be worth it. What would I do with him? I wouldn't save him. Once again, I don't believe him coming back as any sort of protagonist is good. But you could have a moment where hypothetically he and Tristan reconcile. And mainly just be for him. He would just be like, hey, sorry, bro. It ain't your fault. It'd be like that when it'd be like that sometimes, especially when it'd be like that. Deuces. You could have something like that where he has to slay him and then bada bing, bada boom. Don't do a Helram situation again either. I think Helram's, ceasing of life is undermined. Well, realistically, the entirety of postseason 1 once it's revealed that he's trapped inside the helmet he gave King. And even though I do admit, I do kind of like the stuff where he goes and sacrifices himself in Conrad, I just don't think it was worth it. So don't do something like that with Jade. Don't let him be like a lingering soul or conscious, even though you very easily could do that with Tristan's powers. Don't do that. Just bring him back as an antagonist. Have them fight. Have them have the whole character revelation. And have him perish once again at the hands of his own friends, just to really dig in how terrible of a person Arthur is. I think it's good. But then we have the secret third option. Just keep him in the grave. And admittedly, part of me is partial to this option, right? Because I don't think Nakaba would go that far. And I know this is weird to say, right? Because admittedly, Nakaba straight up, bang, and then confirming it, a chat, like straight up putting it down, like writing it down on a piece of it. Like, that don't happen. That don't usually happen with Nakaba. A lot of what Four Knights has been doing don't usually happen with Nakaba. So, like, I'm not saying it's entirely out of Nakaba's wheelhouse to just break my ankles and absolutely send me to the Shadow Realm, or like put me in the back rooms like Isagi did to Jigiri. Like, it's not entirely impossible, but it just feels a teeny tiny bit unlikely. Like, in the back of my mind, I don't see Nakaba going that dark. Though admittedly, he's gone pretty dark before, especially within Four Knights. So like, he can do it, but I don't see him doing it. And I feel like Nakaba going very heavy-handed with boom, bam, bang, kapow. He's done. We're done with him. I'm sick and tired. We're putting him in the ground and we're making the magical undead people say that he's permanently gone. Like, if we're going that far, we're going that in depth, we're taking a whole chapter to really explain how bro is gone, and how this is going to have ramifications of the entire cast. If we're really doing this, and possibly a decent chunk of chapter 101 is going to be Tristan reacting to this information, like, this may just be it. And once again, I was already talking about how we still got 9 other characters. We got a chunky little bit of cast still rolling around that all have their own things to discuss and their own potentials if they were to hypothetically go and be brought back, and their own, like, we still have so much we need to cover. And I'm still low-key acting under the assumption that Seven Deadly Sins in Four Knights will be around the same length. So for a character as minor and as random and as dumb bubblegum built like a plot device kind of character that Jade was, it wouldn't be surprising me if Nakaba straight up built him for, ironically enough, the inverse reason why he brought the commandments back. Nakaba, I feel like he's somewhat a power scaler, but not in like the ultimate degree. Like, he's not out here calcing and stuff. He's not doing all that. But there are things he does strictly for that. Like, bringing the commandments back was the purest example of, I need to establish how powerful characters are right now. With the previously established metric, I'm going to use the commandments. He did that for a reason. It was specifically for a power scaling reason. I refuse to believe there's anything else, because he literally did nothing else with the characters. But in the case of executing Jade, this feels like the inverse effect of that, where this was solely done not necessarily for a power scaling or narrative balancing front, but specifically for character writing. And once again, we're just going to keep piling on the darkness. And top this off with the idea that there's realistically no reason for Arthur to be that petty. Like sure, he could be. And we've seen that Arthur can be deliciously petty in his own way. Once again, he did not have to send 2 random commandments to go chop up the kingdom and then proceed to make a stairway from the heavens downwards to go walk on in and really flex a little bit. He didn't have to do all that. He was feeling a little bit spicy that day and he did it. So like, it's entirely possible that Arthur could be that petty, but not for Jade, though. Like, that's the thing, just not for Jade. If more important characters end up going, like a Nasiens, like a Donners, like a Chion, like a... Once again, I don't think the love interests are ever going to get packed, so not them. But those 3 in particular, the remaining major characters, or major side characters, if they end up going, I could see Arthur being that petty, because it would have more impact on our main character in Percy if Arthur goes out of his way to revive a hypothetical taken out Nasiens or taken out Donny, and or more impactful on Tristan if he lost his admittedly non-biological cousin. So like, I think those are more likely, considering, you know, that could hypothetically fit within the time span if we're trying to work on a specific time span. But Jade, though, he feels a little bit too random. And once again, with the explicit nature of Jade's execution, I feel like this is Nakaba just confirming, yeah, I brought him into the narrative solely for the character development, and we're not going to do any more character development from that. And I can see that. I can see that. Notably, I think it's even fine. Like, this would be Nakaba once again kind of building the counter narrative against the idea that, oh, Nakaba never gets rid of everybody, or anybody for that matter. So I can see Nakaba just putting him in the ground and keeping him in the ground. Once again, he has at least 3 more expendable characters, plus 2 more if he's really getting fancy. And the general circumstances around Jade and his hypothetical revival are iffy at best, just due to Jade's relative lack of narrative importance. Once again, bro wasn't even around for a full 50 chapters, so I could see him just being gone. However, that's what I think. Please let you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure the notifications so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also I do a page down below. Each word as low as 1. Cut them 1. Down 1. Tons of videos, early content, and more. Also now become a Maryland channel for as low as 3 hours a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That with a Pencil, writing off.